Om Ajnana-timirandhasya Gyananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So we are continuing with our discussion of chapter 5. We would want to conclude it this session. What is very important about this chapter is that this chapter has a description of the activities of Lord Brahma as queried by Sri Narad Muni. And then what we do find is that with all the activity which Lord Brahma engages in the material sphere, the creation of the entire material universe, with all that activity, he has an advantage because he is situated in the highest mode of goodness, the higher category of goodness, where the coming in touch with the mode of passion and ignorance is very, very minimal. Being in that particular position in Satyaloka, Lord Brahma has a distinct advantage. He has an advantage of being able to keep in touch with Krishna because he's the secondary creator. He has an advantage of not being affected by his creation. He also has an advantage of being able to act according to the plan laid out in the spiritual sky. So we understood that there is a blueprint which is conveyed to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is given a mantra which enables him to acquire the intelligence and the potency to be able to create. In other words, a mantra which keeps him in touch with Krishna's blueprint, a mantra which keeps him in touch with his original identity, and then he is able to create the material universes and then not be affected by his creation. So this is a very, very important piece of information for us because in the chapter 5, we are being told that if you want to engage in material energy, which we all do, we need to have the protection of the higher levels of goodness. And when we reach the higher levels of goodness, a few things happen, which is just phenomenal. The experience of Lord Brahma can be extended to us, even though we are minuscule, we are very insignificant. The experience of Lord Brahma can be extended to us. When Lord Brahma is in the mode of goodness, he is in touch with Krishna's blueprint. So he knows the desires of the Lord. He is being given help. He is being given resources. He is being protected from the creation because that's false ego. You see, he is being protected in certain ways just because he is coming in touch with Krishna so powerfully. Now, what is the clue for us here? By being situated in the mode of goodness, we have the ability to come in touch with inputs. We have the ability to come in touch very effectively with Krishna as Krishna's Naam. Krishna's names become very clear. So this takes us to our process of chanting. When we are chanting, every one of us can acknowledge that over the years, most of our chanting is a struggle with what the mind presents to us at the time of chanting as a priority. So we sit down for chanting, and then the mind reprioritizes, and it tells us, you got to solve this problem, you got to meditate on this issue, you got to find a solution for X problem, Y problem, etc. Now, this is an issue that we face. It's a struggle. So it almost feels as if it's endless. What am I doing? I've spent 10 years chanting, and in these 10 years, all I've done is struggle with the mind, because all the mind is doing is presenting things to me which I have to struggle. So for 2 hours, I push and I push back and I push back, and then I somehow or the other struggle with my rounds, complete the rounds, and then the next day happens. This has been an experience that many, many devotees would acknowledge. Many devotees would even agree with in terms of their own personal experiences. Now, why does this happen? This struggle happens because we are in touch with the lower modes of passion and ignorance. The struggle of passion is intense because passion induces one to desires. Passion induces one to attachments. And because of attachments and desires, there's great suffering, which is the mode of ignorance. passion unfulfilled falls in the category of mode of ignorance. But while we are passionate, the mind is agitated. The mind is presenting us with so many different alternatives. It is not allowing us to sit and focus and hear Nam. Now, this is the reason why Srimad Bhagavatam says, Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu. Badram is auspiciousness. Yeah, Badram is auspiciousness. Abhadreshu is that which is not auspicious. So, Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu. Basically, you would be getting rid of all inauspiciousness by coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavat. But what is this inauspiciousness? The inauspiciousness is passion and ignorance, the lower modes of nature. This is inauspiciousness, because once you come into the higher modes of nature, then we are naturally situated to receive. We are naturally situated to receive from Krishna. We are naturally situated to perform devotional service. It is actually a platform which is very conducive. Even though there are certain, I would say, there's some perception of the mode of passion and ignorance, because within the material universe, you can't really get rid of passion and ignorance completely. They will influence at some level, but because there is an overwhelming dose or overwhelming quantity of the mode of goodness, we have the ability to manage this. So this is basically the point where one receives faith, comes in touch with a guru, receives faith, Ado Shraddha. Then we have Sadhu Sangha because we are inspired and we want to be with those who are like us. And then we engage in Bhajana Kriya. Then the point of Anartha Nivritti, it is not a complex term. The point of Anartha Nivritti is all about Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu. It is all inauspiciousness being removed. What is being removed in the process of Anartha Nivritti? The idea of being in touch with the material modes of passion and ignorance is being removed. The material modes of passion and ignorance prioritizing for us is being removed. That is what is being removed. As a consequence, Anartha Nivritti is all about us being able to free ourselves from the so-called attachments and desires that are imposed upon us by the lower modes of nature. This is basically our idea of transcending, moving from one level of consciousness to the other. We are climbing and scaling a peak. Yeah, the peak is the mode of goodness. The peak is Satyaloka, for instance, in terms of consciousness, that allows us the facility to concentrate in seva. Because in that particular position, the jiva has the ability to put all the energy into Nam. So when you chant in the higher modes of goodness, where the mind is completely still, the 2 hours of chanting is complete absorption. That is why if one has attained perfection in chanting, they can chant 64 rounds, they can chant 128 rounds in quick succession within a very short period of time. Within a very, very short period of time, they can chant this. The reason is they are undisturbed by the mind. As a consequence, they have the ability to focus. They are able to hear Nam while they are chanting. So this chapter is quite critical. It is about mantra japa. It is about us being in touch with our original identity, because when we are in touch with our original identity, then we would know what to do. Our original identity becomes revealed to us as the influence of passion and ignorance move away. The mellow that we are attached to in Krishna's service becomes evident. The details of the mellow comes stronger and stronger as we move from Anartha Nivritti towards Ashakti and Bhav. How does it happen? It is matter of us moving from where we are in passion and ignorance to the highest levels of mode of goodness and then beyond. As we get closer and closer to the spiritual sky, there's a host of information that comes to us because we become very close to being able to understand the nature of our service and our nature here as well. We become very close to coming to understand what we have to do here as we go closer and closer to the spiritual sky in consciousness. It doesn't mean we have to just go up. It means that in consciousness, whilst being on the planet, we are elevating ourselves. And by elevating ourselves, we are reaching a point where as we come closer and closer to the spiritual sky, what needs to be learnt about our service becomes very evident. It becomes very evident because we now know what we are in connection with Krishna. Once someone knows their connection with Krishna and Radharani in the spiritual sky, they will never forget that connection because they will have experiences associated with that connection. There would be greed. We call it lobha. Then why the sadhana bhakti becomes raga marga? There's attachment. Now there's greed because now there is an identity. The sambandha has gone. very high, because there's great Sambandha Gyan, then what is being forced upon us as Vidhi, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti gets transformed into service due to attachment and love. So this is a transition that is made simply by purifying ourselves and coming in touch with Krishna, consistent with the desires of our Acharyas, coming in touch with Krishna through the hearts of the senior accomplished Vaishnavas. Because they carry greed, they carry lobha, they have the ability to spill those benefits upon us when we come in touch with them and we serve them. Yeah, this is throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. The theme is to receive mercy, to position ourselves for mercy. This is what we're trying to do. But then the work that we have to put in is to position ourselves to receive mercy. How do you come in touch with a good soul? We cannot come in touch with a good soul if we are in the mode of ignorance. We come in touch with a good soul who has the ability to give us deep faith if we are in the higher modes, because they are not going to be in the lower modes, they're going to be in the higher modes. It's very simple. It's very simple. Proper desires would start forming. So this is a very cultured, very, very appropriately designed process, which talks about elevating consciousness, coming in touch with adequate information as we elevate consciousness. More information reinforces our identity in the spiritual sky. Greater the reinforcement of identity, greater the efficiency with which we would act. This is natural. This is basically a transition which is absolutely natural. It is not a struggle. So then you have Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, which is forced upon us. Vaidhi comes from Vidhi, which is the other name of Lord Brahma. So because he has written down the Vidhi, or in terms of the process and the different procedures for engaging in sadhana through his scriptures, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti basically has to follow scriptural injunctions, and it is forced upon us. In other words, we are forced to act. We don't wake up spontaneously. We don't jump out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning wanting to grab our beads and wanting to chant. The Vaishnavas who are accomplished and who are close to their siddhis, they have a tendency to be able to wake up very early, and they're very eager to come in touch with Nam. Very, very eager. Because they have a tendency to very eagerly come in touch with Nam, it is not forced upon them. Why? Because this attachment and this eagerness has naturally come upon them, because now they've understood that Krishna is their beloved. Yeah, they have to serve him. So they have fallen in love. As a consequence, it's no more force. Surrender in our business is not so much a matter of someone pointing a gun at us. Surrender is not a matter of so much pointing a gun at us. That is fear. Our surrender should come out of love. So as we go higher and higher and understand the relationship, because of love, we surrender. Because that's natural. It is quite natural that when you're in love with someone, then you surrender. Because you want to basically surrender to their whims and fancies in certain ways, if you want to put it that way. Yeah? You constantly make adjustments. There is no force. You're centering your life around them. As a consequence, you change everything. You're saying, this is the time I ought to be getting up. This is what I will eat. This I will not touch, because it has not come in touch with the lips of Krishna and Radharani. I will not touch this. I will only associate this way. I will go here, and this is where I will spend my holidays, my vacation time. All these plans come about as we reinforce our identity. And as it becomes more and more evident, and as we make advancement, it is no longer fiction. It is no longer, I would say, abstract. It is abstract in the beginning. It is where you don't understand. You have a certain notion, you're making inferences, you're following the guru, you're following the sadhus, you're following in the footsteps. Our hearts are at least good enough that we recognize that we have to follow someone who is walking in front of us. We respectfully follow and serve, but then that is still an abstract concept of service. Yeah, to do service is good. Yeah, because we are good people. Most devotees are very, very good people. As a consequence, they have a very open idea that they should serve. They should serve because it's a good thing to be selfless. It's a good thing to offer our time to Krishna. These are all things that are coming about because they've accepted an abstract concept of service, which is quite abstract. It is abstract. They've accepted it. They haven't understood the nuts and bolts, but they've accepted it because it's a way of life. They're good people. As a consequence, it's easy for them to receive this mercy and say that, yes, I need to develop this because this is a great concept. This is what I should be doing because it's just wonderful. But then as time progresses and we progress in our sadhana, the abstract concept of service turns into a reality because we fall in love. And the falling in love process is natural because we receive information, and it is no longer abstract. It is highly, highly, highly defined. And when the relationship becomes highly defined and it has attributes, you tend to know so much about who you are in the spiritual sky, you can't but help acting in the right manner. You see, there's really no such thing as pretense. There's no abstract concept. Yet no one has to come and tell us you got to serve Krishna because you're a jiva, you're a part and parcel of the Lord. Since you're a part and parcel of the Lord, you're a das or a dasi. This is a concept. But when the das and dasi realize who they are in the spiritual sky, or rather they come closer and closer to realizing their sambandha with Krishna, this concept, which is abstract of being a part and parcel of Krishna, never occurs to them. They are engaging in what is quite natural because of the relationship itself. That's spontaneity, you see? So there's a spontaneous relationship. So for example, Mother Yashoda doesn't have to be reminded of her relationship with Krishna. Nanda Maharaj do not have to be reminded, he does not have to be reminded of his relationship with Krishna. The Gopas and Gopis, they do not have to be reminded of the relationship with Krishna. They do not have to be told that there's a good thing for you. You are a part and parcel of him. You see, your das and your dasi, this is who he is. He's the Supreme Personality of God. They don't need any of this. They are already in love. Their life revolves around him. Yeah? This little boy, or you can say youthful boy, depending on where the Leela is, he lifts up a mountain with his pinky, and they just follow him under the mountain. It's incredible. Yesterday was a very special day in Vrindavan. Every day is special. Yesterday was a special day. There was an extraordinarily fierce storm that happened yesterday, and it started spontaneously. The storms in Vrindavan are very different. They are not like the storms that we have experienced elsewhere. The wind will start howling. You will literally see that the wind and the rains are entities. Literally, you can feel that they have personality. And the fierceness is extraordinary. Chairs in the terrace will start flying. Yeah. The chairs will start flying. Rain will just splash inside the, it's just horrible in the sense that it's an experience which is quite fierce with thunder and lightning and so on and so forth. It's dramatic. It is not something which you can ignore. It is very, very powerful. Now, it kind of gives you a notion as to how they could have felt when rain was pouring down upon them during Govardhan Leela for 7 days. They had absolutely no second thoughts to follow that little boy under the mountain. They did not do so because they had to do so or someone forced them to do so. They did so because of love. They knew that this little boy was the object of love. They had nothing else but him. And they basically surrendered. He made an arrangement and they surrendered into the arrangement with complete faith. They didn't care what would happen after that because there was love. So love precedes surrender. Our business of surrender happens after the fact. Yeah, love comes first and then surrender is after, because then it's natural. You surrender to the beloved because the beloved basically says that, he wakes up at such time, then you make arrangements. They all rush in the morning at 6 o'clock in front of Krishna's house. They haven't had their bath, all the boys. They're all in front of Krishna's house waiting to wake him up. And after he has woken up and then, they have a little pastime, then they come back home and get ready. They all rush back again. So practically everything is centered around him. So this is love. This activity of being Krishna-centered is not being forced upon them. So the idea of Vaidhi Bhakti being transformed into Ragamag, attachment, comes because love develops because there is an identity which is being imposed. An identity which is practically becoming very clear that this is who I am. It is not abstract. It is a very clear concept. There's a specific mellow. This is how I'm supposed to love him. I'm supposed to be a parent. I'm supposed to care for him just as a parent would care for a child. Or I'm supposed to care for him as a friend would. I consider him my equal. Yeah, it's highly disturbing for such devotees to basically interact with Krishna as God because it spoils the interaction. So this is quite fascinating to see how in Vraja, the activity in Raja is completely centered on Krishna. And this is natural because there's love, and they all basically surrender. They all surrender to Krishna, and this is also due to love. So this whole concept of being able to come from a state of being forced into sadhana, struggling with our rounds in the morning at 6 or 7 or 4, or whatever the time that we choose to do, and spending almost 2.5 hours of chanting, where most of the time is just a struggle against what the mind is prioritizing, saying, you need to take care of this, and this is a problem, that relationship is an issue, the economic issues are there. The mind keeps going around and round and round around what it knows best. This transition from that particular point to a point where there's a focus on Nam, there's absorption in Nam, and then there's surrender, there's love. This transition requires a movement from passion ignorance to goodness. This is the concept which is being discussed in such great detail. Why is this being discussed in this chapter? Because when creation occurs, first there is sound, and then there is the whole idea of coming in touch with each other, air, and then there is fire, water, earth. You see, the 5 elements get created in succession. But here it is being said, first there's goodness, and then passion, and then ignorance is what causes action. That's what is being discussed here. Quite fascinating to see that ignorance is what causes action. This chapter says ignorance is what causes action. What does it mean when Krishna in the Bhagavatam says ignorance causes action? Which means that our whole concept of being able to act in this world is an ignorance of our original position. So the mode of ignorance starts coming into our life, and we start thinking that we are not Krishna's servant. In fact, we forget our identity. We don't remember who we are, and we start acting in this world. So action in this world requires the mode of ignorance. What does it also mean? When the mode of ignorance comes in and we start acting, we are also setting a timer on that particular action, because the mode of ignorance basically is a destructive mode. We are also setting a timer. The moment we start something, there has to be an end. It is going to die, it is going to be transformed, it is going to change quite remarkably. So the beginning and the end starts with the mode of ignorance. This is the time factor. It is fascinating to see that the mode of ignorance causes action. Can you believe it? The mode of ignorance causes, it is not the mode of goodness which causes action. It is the mode of ignorance. And the mode of ignorance causes action because we identify with something else, and we start making inroads, and we start doing things in this world to fulfill that identity. Yeah, we identify with something else. In the mode of goodness, we are closer to our identity of Krishna as being Krishna's servant. At that time, we have a blueprint of what he wants us to do. We have a blueprint. We have clarity in terms of the expectation of the Lord. And there's so much which has already been given to us in terms of information that we are not in ignorance. We are in, I would say, a greater level of awareness of our identity. And action in that particular level, it does not have consequences, because that is also the level where we take action based on Krishna's plan. So the whole chapter revolves around how we act. And it is all based on upadhi. Upadhi means dress. Sarva upadhi vinirmuktam. We are wearing a certain dress. And when we identify with this dress so strongly, it produces a certain motivation for action. And this action that we act upon, just identifying on this dress, the upadhi, is done in the mode of ignorance. But instead, if we are in the mode of goodness, then we are in touch with the blueprint which the Lord has provided us. Because we are in touch with the blueprint which the Lord has provided us, we follow what he wants us to do. It becomes Krishna-centered. As a consequence, it doesn't disturb us. See, in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita, there is a commentary. It was actually, I think it was a purport written by our devotee, I forget his name. He left his body recently, the great Sanskrit scholar. He also assisted with the translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. I will remember Prabhu's name. I forget for a brief moment. I just don't remember his name. My memory slips. But that devotee basically had written a purport. It was given that, basically, in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Yudhishthira Maharaj and the Pandavas, they were not bewildered by acquiring the whole planet after Mahabharat. They were not bewildered because the arrangement was done by Krishna himself. Before that, they were quite bewildered. You see, there was so much struggle. But after the fact, they were not bewildered. What does it mean? It means that if something is arranged by Krishna, it will not interfere with Krishna consciousness. If something is arranged by Krishna, it will never interfere with Krishna consciousness. Krishna never interferes with Krishna consciousness. Sometimes we think Krishna is posing an obstacle. No, Krishna will not interfere with our Krishna consciousness. Just think about it. It sounds ridiculous, but it is true. We think about sometimes that Krishna interferes with Krishna consciousness. Krishna, if he makes an arrangement for our future, that arrangement, if it is naturally made by Krishna, it will never interfere with our Krishna consciousness. If the arrangement that we are in today is interfering with our Krishna consciousness, it is because we made this arrangement. And this arrangement was made through the false ego. This arrangement was created by coming in touch with the mode of ignorance. Does it make sense? The identification with the body evolved a certain sense of needs, and these needs made us think that there is a certain possibility. I could be happy. We create a certain future. Today we are in that future that was created 20 years back. If it is posing obstacles to us because we created it, it was based on the body, it was based on the false ego. This is a future that was created by us. Today, we meditate on Nam and constantly beg the Lord to situate us in the future in a position where we can serve him 24/7. Then Krishna will make those arrangements. Those prayers will be heard. That arrangement won't interfere with Krishna consciousness. So we should be very careful when we are in the material world, because the material world action is perpetuated by the mode of ignorance. What is the mode of ignorance? The mode of ignorance is the forgetting of who we are in relationship with Krishna. The sambandha is forgotten. Because the sambandha is forgotten and we have forgotten who we are, we forget dharma. How can we do action when we do not know who we are? When we do not know what our role is in a certain organization, how could we execute? So that is the change. The change is brought forth by first coming to the mode of goodness. Because in the mode of goodness, we have the ability to faithfully receive a blueprint into our heart. Just as Lord Brahma received a blueprint, we receive a blueprint from Krishna saying, this is what you need to do. Let us assume that you don't have a blueprint. Yeah? Let us assume that you don't have a blueprint and you're questioning this particular concept of a blueprint. How could I have a blueprint for the future? What is the blueprint? How could I vet it to make sure that it is Krishna's plan? Simple. Start desiring what the Acharyas want us to desire. The Acharyas are representatives of Krishna. They are from the spiritual sky. Start desiring what the Acharyas want us to desire. When we start desiring what the Acharyas want us to desire according to the plan in the Bhagavatam, then we will be creating a future based on what Krishna wants us to do. The blueprint is in Shastra. The blueprint is in Sadhu and Guru. This is how we formulate the future. A blueprint has to be received. But what is it that is going to give us the ability to hear, see, and absorb the blueprint? Be in the mode of goodness. At least work towards being in the mode of goodness. That is the whole idea of sadhana bhakti, is that we're going from coming in touch with passion and ignorance. Ignorance makes us create few things for the future. Those things invariably interfere with our Krishna consciousness. They pose challenges. So the idea is move away from this passion and ignorance. They make it extraordinarily troublesome and problematic for us. Move away from them through your sadhana. Situate ourselves in the higher mode of goodness. Use goodness as a platform, because that allows you to come in touch with great personalities. It allows you to hear Shastra, listen to Shastra, hear Shastra, absorb Shastra. It allows us basically to imbibe and walk in the footsteps of the preceding Acharyas. The blueprint is there. The blueprint is just 5 points. I mention this all the time because it's easy to implement. Panchanga Bhakti is our blueprint. Sadhu Sangha, and Sadhu is one who has complete faith in Nam. That is the definition of Sadhu. Dress, age, gender doesn't matter. What matters is complete faith in Nam. They have faith and dependence on Nam. Nam is Krishna. Krishna is Nam. Dependence on Nam. Sadhu is dependence on Nam. This is the definition of Srila Haridas Thakur. So Sadhu Sangha is one who is dependent on Nam, and because of his intrinsic dependence on Nam, it rubs off on us when we associate and we feel inspired to chant. That is Sadhu Sangha. Yeah? The second point is Namasmaran, dependence on Nam. Again, Namasmaran, Namakirtan. Third point is Bhagavat Shravanam, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. In the company of Nam and in the company of sadhus, we hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And then the fourth point is deity worship, because we will immediately be motivated to come and worship and serve the limbs of Krishna. We want to come in touch with Krishna in so many different ways. The deity is the most appropriate, extraordinarily powerful way to come in touch with Krishna. But I would start with Nam. My favorite, to be honest, is Nam and Bhagavatam, because without Nam and Bhagavatam, we can never be motivated properly to serve the deity. Never. Yeah, we would never be in a position to serve properly. So come in touch with Nam first. Come in touch with Bhagavatam first. Be motivated. Be reinforced. Then you move towards deity worship and Dham Seva. Yeah. Dham Seva is coming to the Dham. Dham Seva could be doing Seva in terms of being able to visit the places of pastimes of the Lord. Dham Vas is basically aspiring to stay in the Dham. Who would aspire to stay in the Dham? Aspiration to stay in the Dham is a matter of having a consciousness which is like a Dhamvasi. And when I'm saying Dhamvasi, I'm talking about the eternal spiritual sky. Having consciousness like the Dhamvasi would allow us to stay in the Dham. Having consciousness like the Dhamvasi means nothing matters other than Krishna. Life is Krishna-centered. Nothing matters. Then, because the village of Vrindavan is such that nothing matters but Krishna, then that consciousness is what is called Dhamvas. So one could have Dhamvas while being in London, they could have Dhamvas while being in Vrindavan, or they could be in Vrindavan and not be here, and they could be in London and be very much in Vrindavan, in terms of being able to have no other desire. So when there is no other desire other than wanting to be in Vrindavan, then one gets to see the pastimes of Vrindavan. Because this is Dham, this is the spiritual sky, it's non-different, it is non-different, this is the spiritual sky. So there's a very thin material layer in Vrindavan and Mayapur. And that material layer is very thin. It can be penetrated by the mercy of the Acharyas and by Nam very easily. And as a consequence, one gets experiences of the Dham in a very powerful way. So these are 5 different points that are being given. This is our blueprint. Desire this blueprint with all your heart. Desire this blueprint and live for this blueprint. Then what happens is life gets created 5 years hence to fit this blueprint. Because who we are today was created 20 years back, perhaps in the previous lifetime. And if today is posing a challenge to the 5 different principles of Krishna consciousness, then reflect on it and understand that today was not created keeping these 5 principles in mind. But there's an opportunity, there's hope. Because as we desire today to create the future, and we keep the 5 principles and this is our blueprint, then we get to create a future which is based on this blueprint. And this blueprint will not interfere with Krishna consciousness because it has come from Krishna. It will not interfere. It is very powerful. And it can create a future. And this is what it is. You see, my experience is such that you can't solve problems in life without spiritual potency. Devotees can solve problems only because they are a part of Lord Chaitanya's movement. As a consequence, all solutions come and there's cooperation from different quarters of the universe simply because we are Lord Chaitanya's servants. We're somehow connected to Lord Gauranga. As a consequence, the universe is cooperating with us. The greater our coming in touch with Lord Chaitanya, the greater our inclination to serve him and his mission, greater would be the cooperation that we receive from the universe. So our problems or creating a blueprint for the future is almost assured if we are completely situated in wanting to serve Lord Gauranga. So this is what we are supposed to do. We are completely dependent on his mercy. As a consequence, focusing on his mercy and wanting to serve him is practically the way we want to move forward. keeping the 5 principles that he has given in, his followers have given. So let's read the chapter, and then we'll touch upon a few points as we go along. Text 22. We are in text 22. I just want to conclude this. I'm going pretty slow, and I tend to repeat. And I was just reflecting on it that I'm going to kind of step up the speed so that we could cover more in the weekly classes. But sometimes when there's an important concept, I tend to dwell on it because it allows people to kind of reflect on it a bit more. So this is text 22 of chapter 5, second canto. After the incarnation of the first Purusha, Karanodakashayi Vishnu, the Mahat Tattva, or principles of material creation, take place, and then time is manifested. And in course of time, the 3 qualities appear. Nature means the 3 qualitative appearances. So, to clarify, Lord Karanodakashayi Vishnu is the first Purusha. He expands from Mahasankarshana. Mahasankarshana is an expansion of Mula Sankarshana, who is Balaram. Mahasankarshana is an expansion of Mula Sankarshana, who is Balaram. This Mahasankarshana, he expands into Karanodakashayi Vishnu. Karanodakashayi Vishnu is lying on the causal ocean. The causal ocean is a part of the spiritual sky. He is lying on the causal ocean, and as he lies on the causal ocean, and each time he breathes in, you would have seen the picture, each time he breathes in, universes enter into the pores of his skin. As each time he breathes out, the universes come out. So his one breath inward and one exhalation is equal to the lifespan of the different Brahmas. Just imagine the whole concept of time at the level of the spiritual sky. One inhalation and one exhalation practically is where the, practically where there is an inhalation and an exhalation is where there is a manifestation of, I would say, universes, and there's an unmanifestation of universes. Quite fascinating to see the scale of time. And these are different Brahmas, and we're talking about billions, trillions of years, and that is not even one breath of Karanodakashayi Vishnu. You can just imagine what this is. Can't even imagine, sorry, is the word. Now, from Sri Karanodakashayi Vishnu, he glances over primordial matter. For the sake of understanding, understand that primordial matter is basically matter which has not developed its variegated phenomenon. It is not variegated yet. It is the material creation as a whole. It is called the Mahat Tattva. It is not variegated yet. He is glancing over it. When he glances over primordial matter, he impregnates the primordial matter with jivas. He impregnates primordial matter with jivas. He is impregnating the matter with jivas, and then activity begins. The activity begins with goodness, passion, and then the time factor comes in. When we use the word time factor, we are talking about ending things. So we are under the influence of eternal time, means there is a beginning, there is an end. That's the mode of ignorance. And then you can classify activities into goodness, passion, and ignorance. So once this glance is over, this glance of Karanodakashayi Vishnu transforms itself into Lord Shiva. Everything has a personality in the spiritual sky. So the glance of Karanodakashayi Vishnu is Lord Shiva. That is why he is non-different from Vishnu, but he is different from Vishnu because he is coming in touch with matter. So the glance is personified as Lord Shiva, and he is coming in touch with matter, which is personified as the external energy of Krishna, who is Mother Durga. So now you have Lord Shiva and Durga Devi managing the entire creation process. The glance is Lord Shiva. Yeah? This is the understanding. Now, once the glance is done and the jivas have been impregnated into the material universe through the agency of Lord Shiva and Mother Durga, then there are creations of different material universes. These different material universes themselves need to be supported, they need to be fed, they need to be cultured, they need to be taken care of, So the same Karanodakashayi Vishnu expands and enters into each material universe as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Yeah? Garbha is the womb. So before that, there was this particular, what we would call as space, and there was matter that had to be created. The Lord then enters into the womb, which is Garbhodaka ocean, and then he lies on the Garbhodaka ocean, and then the creation process begins, because from his navel, the lotus, or we would say the subtle stem, falls, comes up, and then you have the different planetary systems. Lord Brahma sits on the top, and that is the one Lord Brahma of that universe. Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is in that universe. Then you also have, within that universe, an outpost. That outpost is the Ksheerasagara. An outpost, I use the word outpost because you can say it is not within the material universe, but it is still there to manage the material universe. In that particular material universe, you have the Ksheerasagara, the ocean of milk, and then Lord Vishnu, he is lying on the ocean of milk as Ksheerodakashayi Vishnu. So you have Karanodakashayi Vishnu, who is lying on the causal ocean. He is glancing at primordial nature, and then the glance is personified as Bhagavan Lord Shiva and Mother Durga. They engage in the process of basically managing the material universe. Lord Shiva is the seed-giving father, but he is the glance of Vishnu. Yeah. Then you have the support of the universe. So the same Karanodakashayi Vishnu expands and goes into the universe, and he becomes Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Each universe has Lord Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. That is the potency which allows the universe to float in the air. It is practically floating in the space, and it has the ability to feed for itself. It is self-sufficient. All of this is being provided by the Lord lying in the Garbhodaka ocean within the universe. And from his navel, creation begins, and Lord Brahma of that universe sits on top, and he's creating the lower planetary systems. Now, in the same universe, you have Ksheerodakashayi Vishnu, and Ksheerodakashayi Vishnu is the third expansion of the Purusha. Now, this Ksheerodakashayi Vishnu is the Gunavatar Vishnu of the universe. He is also the super soul. He expands and enters into the heart of each and every jiva. So now you have Karanodakashayi Vishnu, you have Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, who maintains the universe, and then you have Ksheerodakashayi Vishnu, who is basically the super soul. Someone, dear devotees, one of you is basically not muting your phone or your laptop. Would you be able to kindly see if and put yourself on mute, please? Yeah, thank you. So now we understand how this works. Now let's just read through it, because as we give it here, it is being said, first there is the mode of goodness, and then there is the mode of passion. Time factor comes in. Then in course of time, the three qualities appear, because then there is the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Material activities are caused by the Mahatattvas being agitated. Agitation requires consciousness, it requires life. Because agitation requires consciousness, it requires life, it is a matter of impregnation of the universe through jiva. How does this impregnation happen? As I said before, the glance of Karanodakashayi Vishnu is personified as Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is the seed-giving father. Mother Durga is the mother of the universe. They are the divine mother and divine father. So their position in the material universe is unique, that they are the seed-giving father and mother. So it is Mother Durga who takes the jivas into her womb. So every one of the jivas you see here have practically been mothered by Mother Durga. She is the mother. Yeah. Now she is the mother who is also the personification of the external energy of the Lord. She is the external energy of the Mahamaya. She is the external energy of the Lord. She is a personification. Lord Shiva is the glance. He is Vishnu, but not Vishnu, because anything and everything associated with Lord Vishnu has a personality. So when Karanodakashayi Vishnu is glancing over primordial nature, that glance becomes Lord Shiva. Okay? So that is how we want to understand it. So the seed-giving father is Lord Shiva. He is fathering, and he's practically playing the role of a father, and Mother Durga plays the role of the mother of the universe, of the jivas, the different varieties of entities, the 8,400,000 different species of life. They all have come from Lord Shiva, but Lord Shiva is the personification of the glance of Karanodakashayi Vishnu. Okay? Material activities are caused by the Mahatattva being agitated. At first, there's transformation of the mode of goodness and passion. And later, due to the mode of ignorance, matter, its knowledge, and different activities of material knowledge come into play. So first there is goodness, and then there's passion. It is mode of ignorance which makes the living entity conceive of a plan which is distinct from Krishna's blueprint. So it is mode of ignorance which makes us act. It is not the mode of passion. It is the mode of ignorance which is making us act. Yeah? You need passion to create. But if you're situated in the mode of goodness, you have Krishna's blueprint. But if you're situated in the mode of ignorance, then we create our own plans and everything goes to dust. Yeah? There's so much talk in the newspapers of India, at least, that Yamuna ji and Ganga ji, they are now crystal clear. They're saying the atmosphere has become so clear that now you can see the fish jumping, you can see clear water running in the Yamuna, which was unthinkable. It used to be frothy and it used to be dangerously polluted, but now you can see clear water, fish jumping. All of this because of 3 months of activities being completely stopped. 3 months of mode of ignorance activity being completely stopped in the material universe. And it has practically brought a blueprint closer to what Krishna would want to have in the material universe. Yeah? Imagine the amount of destruction we cause by coming in touch with the mode of ignorance. And the mode of ignorance is nothing but our identification with other identities disassociated from Krishna. This is the real reason of trouble. The real reason of trouble is our misidentification of who we are. And that's the whole purpose of sadhana bhakti, is to reinforce the identity that we are servants of the Lord. Abstract, but then later it gets defined as particularly we are servants of the Lord in a specific mellow, and we have to serve him in this manner. It's fascinating to see the amount of damage we cause just by coming in touch with this universe. And action starts when we come in touch with the mode of ignorance. Incredible. So the next time we want to do something, let us ensure that we want to remember and beg for mercy from Mahaprabhu so that we don't act according to our plans, we act according to his plans. Let's remember the blueprint. Let's remember the blueprint of the Acharyas, the preceding Acharyas, so that we don't end up doing things which are based on the mode of ignorance, because it is action that comes from the mode of ignorance. It is almost frightening. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare because 3 months of lack of activity on the Yamuna has practically seen the fish jumping. You can see clear water. 3 months of lack of activity. Yeah? They spent millions and billions of dollars they couldn't clear up. 3 months of just stopping the mode of ignorance. And what is the mode of ignorance? Not knowing their relationship with the Lord. Just 3 months of stopping the nonsense because of the coronavirus has practically cleared the Yamuna waters, because that is in line with Krishna's plan. It's a blueprint. Yeah? I'm not saying that we want to suffer or the human race should suffer. That is not the Vaishnava mood, but it is an extraordinary lesson that when we act in ignorance, we are dangerous. And our actions, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, begin when we come in touch with the mode of ignorance. Until then, our actions are in line with Krishna's desires. They do not affect the progress of the universe. They don't affect and they don't hurt the other living entities. It is quite revealing. The self-centered, this is a translation of the next verse. The self-centered materialistic ego, thus being transformed into 3 features, becomes known as the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance in 3 divisions, namely the powers that evolve matter, knowledge of material creations, and the intelligence that guides such material activities. Narada, you're quite competent to understand this. From the darkness of false ego, the first of the 5 elements, namely the sky, is generated. Its subtle form is the quality of sound, exactly as the seer is in relationship with the seen. How do we understand this verse? From the darkness of false ego, once the living entity is in touch with the mode of ignorance, then they come in touch with powerful sound vibrations that are connected and to the material world and disconnected from Krishna. We go window shopping. We watch television, and we watch, for example, we browse through the internet. There is a sound vibration that comes in. The sound vibration from the television, from the internet, from co-workers, our bosses, our peers, our neighbors who are not Krishna conscious, their sound vibration puts ideas into our heart. So the mode of ignorance practically starts with a sound vibration. And that sound vibration is an idea. Someone says, you ought to do this because I'm doing it. Look at my car, look at my house. I'm just giving a very simplistic example. It is not that simple. I'm giving a very simplistic example. Someone who is with us starts agitating our mind by telling us what he did or she did and point to their accomplishments. They have nothing to do with Krishna, but they point to their accomplishments. And then that particular sound vibration is nothing but the beginning of our problems, because it gets into our head. Then we assume, due to our false ego, that that's the plan that Krishna has. This is our blueprint, and we start heading towards that. This is how trouble begins. Trouble begins with sound. Trouble begins with sound, and trouble is unwound and undone with sound. That's why Mahamantra unwinds and undoes what we experience. The anxieties that we experience by coming in touch with sound vibration that is in touch with the mode of ignorance is destroyed by coming in touch with the Mahamantra. Nam and Srimad Bhagavatam destroy the extraordinary level of ignorance that we get into by coming in touch with material mode of ignorance. It's fascinating that sound creates problems, and another category of sound, which is from the spiritual sky, basically helps us. It's fascinating. It is fascinating how we undo our problems as well. It's quite fascinating to see how this works. So the false ego begins with sound. Take that message. And the false ego ends with sound, which is the Mahamantra. Because the sky is transformed, the air is generated with the quality of touch, and by previous succession, the air is also full of sound. And the basic principles of duration of life, sense perception, mental power, and bodily strength. When the air is transformed in course of time and nature's course, fire is generated, taking shape with the sense of touch and sound. Since fire is also transformed, there's a manifestation of water, full of juice and taste. As previously, it also has form and touch, it is also full of sound. And water, being transformed from all variegatedness on earth, appears odorous, and previously becomes qualitatively full of juice, touch, sound, and form, respectively. Juice, touch, sound, and form. Juice, rasa. Because we come in touch with sound that is connected with the mode of ignorance, we ultimately end up developing rasa, relationships, and a taste for material consciousness. So our activity that begins with an ingestion of sound that is disconnected from Krishna develops into, from an idea stage, a seed which has been sown into our heart. It gets water, it gets culture, it starts building, we build a castle, and the castle basically finally develops a certain rasa. We find some taste. Yeah, we find some taste. We find some taste in coming in touch with what we have done. That rasa is basically what they're referring to here as juice. Yeah, earth has smell. You can smell earth after it rains. Yeah. Then one step below that, water has no smell. It's odorless. One step below that, fire, there is no taste. Water has taste. Fire, you can't smell, neither can you basically taste it. One step below air, you can't see, you can't taste, you can't smell, but you can feel. One step below that, you can't do anything but hear. Yeah, sound vibrations. You can't see, you can't feel, you can't touch, you can't smell, you can't taste. So the development of an idea, which is sound, brings us in touch with the mode of ignorance, or rather the mode of ignorance brings us in touch with sound. And then it basically helps us create a future. The future has the other ingredients put into it. Finally, it reaches a point where it also has a lot of shape, it has taste, it has sound, it has everything else, all the embellishments, all the bells and whistles. The problem, it is far, far away from the blueprint of the Lord. And when we are in touch with it, we are in touch with it with an identity which has nothing to do with Krishna. Because the sound vibration that started this creation had nothing to do with Krishna in the first place. How do we undo our attachments, which comes due to suffering by coming in touch with these creations of ours, which in one sense have nothing to do with Krishna? The undoing part also starts with sound. So there's Nam, right? Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela. So we start with Nam, right? Then we start hearing about the glorifications of the Lord. Then there's a form. Then there's Leelas. We start undoing what we assume as our identity through sound as well. Nam, when it is being chanted, starts blossoming in our heart like a lotus and starts revealing things to us in a stage by stage way. It undoes our identity in the material world. It practically undoes what we think is important. So sound comes in touch and takes us out. Also it's sound. It is Nam which can take us out. You've got to hear Nam from the lips of a pure devotee. When Nam is heard from the lips of a pure devotee, when we chant purely, when we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, it gives us an idea of who we are, because sound is how we're going to undo what has already been created by sound from the mode of ignorance. Think about this concept. Because we are in passion, we have a tendency to do some window shopping. Because we are in passion, we have a tendency to do some window shopping. We have passion in our hearts. We walk and then we say, oh, I need this. I need this. Look at that guy. He has something that I need. Look at her. She has something that I need. This is passion. It starts doing some window shopping. Because there is passion, we start looking at the world and we start developing desires. Most of those desires are unqualified, and as a consequence, we don't have the sukriti, we don't have the piety to fulfill those desires, but these desires are in our heart. They agitate us. Someone else has this, someone else is doing it. This agitation, since it is going to be unfulfilled, because we don't have all that it takes to live in this world, many of us don't. Yeah, there's something missing for many of us. As a consequence, there's passion. In passion, we desire, we develop desires. There's a lot of attachment that because someone else is doing it, I need to do this as well. But then we notice that the same passion, when it is unfulfilled, becomes a mode of ignorance. There's great suffering. Why? Because this passion has now become unfulfilled. As a consequence, we start suffering. I had this desire, it's not fulfilled. I had the other desire, which was not fulfilled, etc. So where is the root cause of problems? The root cause of problems is being in touch with the mode of passion. If we elevate ourselves to goodness, then the attachments are not serious at all. There's very little. The attachment that's in the mode of goodness can be resolved very easily. In the mode of goodness, it allows us to contemplate. In the mode of passion and ignorance, there is no choice. We go with passion and ignorance. You know, have you heard of the statement, a crime of passion? They use the word a crime of passion. You know, he basically acted because he was passionate. He acted because he was passionate. Even the modern world classifies crimes as a crime of passion. Because he was passionate, he couldn't think, and he just acted on it. You see, they have this expression. So that's what this is. Passion has no freedom. In the mode of ignorance, there is no choice. There's absolutely no choice. There isn't a choice at all. There's no thinking process in the mode of ignorance either. So let's understand this very clearly. We are in trouble because of sound, and it is sound that can get us out. We are in trouble because of sound. It is sound that can get us out, which is what is being said here. So this very complex topic which is being discussed, the very complex passage which is being discussed here, is simply a demonstration of, number one, someone is in passion. Because they are in passion, they are in touch with others who are in passion. Because they're in touch with others who are in passion, they hear things from them, sound. Yeah, they hear sounds which are nothing but ideas, expressions which are in passion. This gets into their ears, into their heart. They start building castles, sand castles on the beach. They start giving it form. They start giving it color. They start developing rasa, attachment to it. Now there's a relationship between them and the castle, which is nothing but a castle, sand castle on the beach. It is not yet over. Yeah, and then there's great suffering. There's great suffering. Then they hear another sound. And the opportunity to hear another sound is because there's mercy. There's a group of devotees who walk on the beach while we are building castles, and they're doing Harinam. And because this group of devotees are doing Harinam sincerely, we hear Nam in our ears. And this sound vibration does something to us too. We start figuring out, oh, this sounds very different. Who are we? What is this sound? We start going searching for it. Somehow or the other, there's a link. And then we come in touch with devotees. We come in touch with books of Prabhupada. We come in touch with Seva. We come in touch with Krishna in the deity form. Life begins, where we start undoing the sandcastle part. We start undoing what we got into original trouble with. And this takes centuries to do and undo. That's the unfortunate part. Fascinating. Fascinating. So sound creates and sound destroys. You come in touch with sound, which is in the mode of ignorance, and there's trouble. You come in touch with sound because you're situated in a proper way, and you're coming in touch with devotees because of either mercy or because we are situated in goodness. We are receiving it. Lord Nityananda, he's flooding this universe through Srila Prabhupada with Harinam. That is mercy. So we come in touch regardless of what our modes are. And then once we come in touch, if we are in the mode of goodness, we get to cultivate this. And we undo centuries and centuries and centuries of action and building castles in the air, castles on the beach, based on sound that is based on the mode of ignorance. Imagine this. How many of us have formed plans in this world which just doesn't make sense after we become devotees? We can't even believe we were that way. Incredible. Incredible what Harinam can do to us. How much clarity comes in when one comes in touch with devotional service. It's incredible, unbelievable amount of clarity, because this is the power of coming in touch with the blueprint of the Lord. We are coming in touch with the blueprint of the Lord because the personification of the Lord in sound. Nama, naminoho, abhinatvam. There's no difference. So we are literally coming in touch with him. And then he says, here's my blueprint. Follow my blueprint. It'll make sense. You will get out. Then life begins. From the mode of goodness, the mind is generated and becomes manifest. And also, the 10 demigods controlling the bodily movements. Such demigods are known as the controller of directions, the controller of air, the sun god, the father of Daksha Prajapati, the Ashwini Kumaras, the fire god, the king of heaven, the worshipable deity in heaven, and the chief of the Adityas, and Brahmaji, the Prajapati, all come into existence. This is dealt with in more elaborate detail in the subsequent chapter, the role of the demigods. So I'm going to leave this here. By further transformation of the mode of passion, the sense organs like the ear, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, and the outlet for evacuating, together with intelligence and living energy, are all generated. Think of this as a project. You can either create a project in Krishna consciousness or you could create a project in material consciousness. It's a project. It is going to develop all kinds of attributes. It's going to have life. And it is going to allow us to develop attachments, or it is going to allow us to develop attachment to Krishna. So this is how dangerous it is in the world. Yeah? It is a dangerous place because imagine just getting one idea in the mode of ignorance. Just one idea, which somehow or the other, because of a misfortune, gets into our head, and we start planning our future based on that idea, which is disconnected from the idea of our Acharyas. We could lose lifetimes undoing the mess that is created. That's why it's important for us to classify, qualify what we hear. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be in touch with the world. It does not mean we don't keep in touch with the world. It does not mean we go into the caves, but we need to understand where we are. We need to understand where this can lead us to. If we don't have a very firm blueprint, then we are in trouble. And the firm blueprint is given in scripture. We are in trouble because we could create a future that will take us lifetimes and lifetimes of work just to undo. So we should be very careful. O Narada, best of the transcendentalists, The forms of the body cannot take place as long as these created parts, namely the elements, senses, mind, and modes of nature, are not assembled. Thus, when all of these become assembled by the force of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this universe certainly came into being by accepting both the primary and the secondary causes of creation. Primary cause of creation, Krishna. Secondary cause of creation, Lord Brahma. Thus, all the universes remain thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings entering into each of them caused them to be fully animated. So this is Karanodakashayi Vishnu, transforming the universes by entering into the universes and becoming Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. You see, quite fascinating is the universe is constructed with the same characteristics as the body of a mother, a human mother, or a mother in the universe. The Garbhodaka ocean is the water in the womb. The Lord lies there allowing creation to happen. You see, then there's a navel. The child is connected to the navel of the mother for sustenance and passing of fluids. It's almost as if the image of the universe and the image of a mother are identical. It's quite fascinating to see how the whole universe is being constructed. The Lord Mahavishnu, although lying in the causal ocean, came out of it and dividing himself as Hiranyagarbha, he entered into each universe and assuming the Virat Rupa with thousands of legs, arms, mouths, heads, etc. This whole idea of Hiranyagarbha is all about the womb, and it's basically Hiranyagarbha is the egg and the womb, and the Lord is entering into it to animate it. So it is basically Garbhodakashayi Vishnu entering in and animating the universes. Great philosophers imagine that the complete planetary systems in the universe are displays of the different upper and lower limbs of the universal body of the Lord. The Brahmanas represent his mouth, the Kshatriyas his arms, the Vaishyas his thighs, and the Shudras are born of his legs. The lower planetary systems, up to the limit of the earthly stratum, are said to be situated in his legs. The middle planetary systems, beginning from Bhuarloka, are situated in his navel, and the still higher planetary systems, occupied by the demigods and highly cultured sages and saints, are situated in the chest of the Supreme Lord. The higher planetary systems are Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapoloka, Satyaloka. Up to Maharloka, these universes, they don't get destroyed at the end of Lord Brahma's day. Lord Ananta, he glances, and in his fury, fire erupts from his mouth, and he envelops the lower planetary systems at the end of Lord Brahma's day. So all the lower planetary systems, starting from below Maharloka right up to the Patala, the lower planetary systems, are completely destroyed by the end of Lord Brahma's day. The sages such as Sage Brigu, and great sages, personalities who are great saintly personalities, they all live in Maharloka. And at the end of Lord Brahma's day, the heat from Lord Ananta forces them to leave Maharloka by the yogic process. They go to the higher planetary systems. And then from the higher planetary systems, they leave when Lord Brahma leaves. From the forefront of the chest up to the neck of the universal form of the Lord are situated the planetary systems named Janaloka and Tapaloka, whereas Satyaloka, the topmost planetary system, is situated on the head of the form. The spiritual planets, however, are eternal. So all of this is a description of the material planets, but spiritual planets, they are eternal. There is no such thing as a change that occurs in terms of them being destroyed. My dear son Narada, know from me that there are 7 lower planetary systems out of the total 14. The first planetary system, known as Atala, is situated on the waist. The second, Vitala, is situated on the thighs. The third, Sutala, on the knees of the Lord. The fourth, Tala on the shanks. The fifth, Mahatala, on the ankles. The sixth, Rasatala, on the upper portion of the feet. And the seventh, Patala, on the soles of the feet. Thus, the Virat form of the Lord is full of all planetary systems. This is basically the universal form. Others may divide the whole planetary system into 3 divisions. Lower planetary systems on the legs up to the earth, The middle planetary systems on the navel, and the upper planetary systems from the chest to the head of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there are different classifications. Ultimately, one can realize that these classifications also are giving us a sense of consciousness. And the consciousness itself is a matter of what is going to remain is that which is in the higher mode of goodness. What is going to get destroyed is passion and ignorance. What is going to remain is Maharloka, where saintly personalities live. Janaloka, Tapoloka, Satyaloka. What is going to get destroyed is that which is more, I would say, formidably in touch with passion and ignorance. So this ends the chapter formally, and we will stop here. We'll take some questions, and then we'll continue again with 6th chapter of the 2nd canto the subsequent week. Any questions? Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much. Mind-blowing class. I mean, the whole creation is mind-blowing. I have 2 questions again. So one question is about the Yamuna. You mentioned about Yamuna being still. 3 months of inactivity has restored to some extent the planet. Now, in knowingly or unknowingly, we are all contributing to the destruction with our jobs and Krishna's blueprint probably would be doing farming and living in self-sustainable land with cows and irrigation and coexisting with animals and other parts of the. My question is, we are not doing any of these. At least I am not party of it. I still live with technology. I use technology a lot. And now my question, we know that is what is the real thing, but we are here now. How do we bridge this gap? How do we, in our own little way, try to follow Krishna's blueprints in saving the planet and other people around us?
It's a matter of consciousness. The first step that we do to fix the world is to fix ourselves. So as a consequence, the first charity needs to begin from home. And the idea is that as we rise higher and higher in consciousness, and as we rise higher and higher in consciousness and become more and more Krishna conscious, then we have the opportunity to be used as instruments in the Lord's service more effectively. Then we have the ability to be instruments who can bring in change. We have the ability to bring change upon others, bring change upon ourselves in a more effective way. So I would say that we first need to accept the circumstance of where we are as Krishna's arrangement. And then we start working on the 5 different principles which form the foundation of which can actually reveal the blueprint to us. So when we start working on the particular 5 different principles of, coming in touch with sadhus, coming in touch with Nam, Bhagavatam, etc., then we are well on the way to creating a future for us which would allow us to align ourselves with the blueprint of the Lord. Now, oftentimes we imagine that such a future should happen next year, perhaps 6 months down the line, 10 years down the line, which may all be true. It can all happen in that particular time frame. But in most of the times, change can happen a bit slower too. It can happen over a lifetime, because in this particular lifetime, we may have created a certain karmic balance which needs to be worked on and which needs to be executed in the circumstances that we are in. So what is very important is for us to first understand that where we are today is where Krishna has put us. So we accept today. Then we start examining today to see, are we really effectively pushing things to the limit? And with all the constraints, as you mentioned, with all the constraints that we have, are we really pushing ourselves to give ourselves to Krishna? The next step would be to really aspire for us to be able to completely be able to do more and more and more. Then such a future with a very concrete blueprint, which we have come in touch with by coming into touch with Krishna consciousness, will be created. It's all a matter of first coming in touch with Krishna consciousness, desiring the blueprint. The intensity of the desire and the practice of sadhana will slowly, steadily create a future of that kind. How soon is it going to be created? That is up to Krishna. But desiring is our business, and accepting what we are today is also our business. That is Trinadapi Sunichena. Accept today as an arrangement of Krishna. That is Trinadapi Sunichena. Tolerate the circumstances. And then push ourselves to the maximum with what's already been given to us. Then when we have pushed ourselves to the maximum and we are aspiring for wanting to do more and more, knowing that our condition is unnatural, Krishna will make arrangements for a better future. That is how we should proceed.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Can I ask the next one, or shall I wait for others and then?
I think you can ask because, then we can go to the next one since you're already on the line.
Okay. The next question is more a very fundamental one. The fact that we were already with Krishna and we were serving in the spiritual world, and somewhere there was a desire to be Krishna himself. So then the whole, what you mentioned today's class, Krishna facilitated all that for us so that we can be gods in this planet, essentially. Okay, so now, again, he's given us a process where we can reverse technology. We go reverse back, and through sound vibration, as you mentioned, we can, go back to him. And the whole thing is so complex on how he has done this whole creation, just so that we can facilitate being gods. What is it? We go back and we forget again? We come back? Or this time we will learn a lesson? Or is it this perpetual thing?
See, yes, this is basically what we would call a question that has to be answered in context. Now, there is a statement that one who goes back to the spiritual sky can never fall down.
But we have.
Yeah, so I'm saying there's a statement that one who goes to the spiritual sky can never fall down. So the next statement that we have fallen down contradicts the first. So first need to understand what is true. Yeah. One who goes to the spiritual sky can never fall down. That answer is true. Now, how did we fall down? When did we forget? This is what is called an ontological question. So let us take a look at how this could have happened so that we can understand and absorb it. First and foremost, Krishna has Bhauma Leela. He has Leela on the planet, on the earthly planet, while he is on the planet. Even if you have read the Mahabharata and studied the Mahabharata, you will notice that there are so many jivas who rejected him while he was on the planet 5,000 years back. Do you remember that? It is very evident. Yeah, so many people around him who knew him, they called him a magician, they called him this, they called him names. They were very, very, very antagonistic towards the Lord while he was on the planet. He was amongst us, and this is Bhauma Leela. That qualifies for being a part of material energy because we rejected him and we wanted to be lords. Yeah? So the rejection can appear when we reject the Lord and his servants while being on this planet. We reject Nam. We reject Nam. We reject, we chant and sometimes we give up. We reject Nam. We are rejecting Krishna while being in touch with him. So falling down into the material world. So let's understand these two statements carefully. That once you go back to the spiritual sky, there isn't a fall down. But you can come in touch with Krishna's Leela. You can come in touch with Nam, Guna Rupa Leela, and you can still reject him. And that qualifies for the second statement, that we were originally conscious and then we became unconscious of his presence in our lives. That is how we should understand this.
Does that mean that if we make it, then we won't do the mistake of coming back again?
If we cross over, the chances of coming back are very less, or rather non-existent. Jaya and Vijaya, the two servants of the Lord who fell down, they fell down because they were serving the Lord as a part of the material creation in the outpost in the Kshirasagara, in the Vaikuntha, where Lord Kshirodokashai Vishnu serves. So in one sense, you can say that they were in touch at some level, at a perceptible level, with passion ignorance. So there was a possibility of forgetting Krishna because they were in touch with the mode of ignorance. And it's also because it was the Lord's will for facilitating his Leela. So once you leave and you go back to the spiritual sky, there isn't a question of falling down. We fall down due to coming in touch with him and rejecting him. We fall down, and we can just look at it demonstrably in our own lives. You see, we have come in touch with Nam, we have come in touch with our movement, but do we accept it? Do we ingest it? No, we reject it. It takes such trouble for Srila Prabhupada at his advanced age to travel around and then establish so many temples, so many disciples, and so many yatras. And then by the time he left, and 10 years after he left, most of them disappeared too. Can you imagine that? I'm just trying to give you an example of scale where the human being, even after being given Krishna very profoundly, can reject Krishna. So it doesn't have to be that you have to travel up to the spiritual sky and forget him. We can forget him here, we can forget him everywhere, because that's our nature.
Very profound. One more about ignorance. You said in ignorance people act. I mean, the action is because of ignorance. I was under the impression that it is the mode of passion that makes you act, like creation, even cooking, or any creative activity, music, or anything that's been. I can't understand how ignorance can be action. So implementing something is in the mode of ignorance.
Yes. Ignorance is false ego. What am I ignorant about? I'm ignorant about my relationship with Krishna. My sambandha with Krishna is completely obfuscated by my other sambandhas. My sambandha with Krishna is real knowledge. What is my relationship with the Supreme Lord? That is real knowledge. Ignorance is I've forgotten him. I've forgotten that relationship. I've forgotten to prioritize him. Then I'm independently identifying with myself as a professional, as a father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, and then I'm making plans for the future. That's what is being meant there.
Okay, so on a grand scheme of things you're saying, say on a granular level, say for example, I decide to cook something for Krishna. That's a desire, offer to Krishna, but on the process, we are also accepting the prasadam, eating the prasadam. So the point I'm making is something like that is in the mode of ignorance, acting, or?
No. So if you're remembering, see, the point is as follows.
Got it.
What I'm trying to say is that action is preceded by identity. Okay. When they use the word action, they're talking about dharma. Only if someone recognizes that they're a father would they understand their duties as a father. So if there's ignorance about even understanding that they're a father, then they wouldn't be able to do their duties as a father properly. So that's why they're talking about the mode of ignorance, acting on the person, thinking that they're masters of the universe. They're identifying with something else in this universe, and then they're using all their creative energy to create a future which has nothing to do with Krishna. That's what they're talking about.
And hence forgetting their dharma as well.
Exactly.
Understand. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Haribol.
Haribol. Any other question or comment? Okay, I'm going to read a couple of comments here. If I understand correctly, there are multiple universes, and each universe has its own Brahma. Do all the Brahmas have the same lifespan? My understanding is that scriptures say that there are 14 planetary systems that support life. Is the number 14 just for our universe or for all universes? 14 seems low considering that there are 400,000 different human forms. 14 planetary systems, even within Earth, there are different kinds of human beings with different levels of consciousness, different levels of abilities, different levels of evolution. So it is not so much a matter of just being in a human body. It is a matter of capabilities and understanding and consciousness. Yeah? So there are different types of human beings even on this planet. Now let's understand the different Brahmas. When we say that the Lord breathes in, all the universe is going, not necessarily at the same time. The Lord breathes in, all the universes get destroyed and enter into the pores of his skin at their own pace. The Lord breathes out, there are universes that are manifest at their own pace. So different Brahmas have different lifespans based on what they do, the complexity of what they do. But in general, Srimad Bhagavatam classifies Lord Brahma as having 100 years of what they would call as Lord Brahma's lifespan. Lord Brahma's lifespan is 1,000 yuga cycles during the day, a similar amount in the night. So it's a massive number of years, inconceivable, almost eternal by our calculation, even for one day. So the answer is, there are different Lord Brahmas. different paces, different universes come into play, go back out, etc. It is not necessary for all of these to happen at the same time. And the 14 planetary systems are what they talk about, 7 up and 7 below, and the 400,000 species of humans, etc., which they talk about. It's even possible to have different types of human beings based on the consciousness and their evolution even here on this planet. Yeah, it is not necessary that it is out of the question. We can't really say that, because for our classification, for our purpose, we look at it externally, we can't perceive it. But from the perspective of Lord Brahma, from the creator's perspective, there's consciousness, there's adaptation, there's the ability to eat certain things, the ability to not eat certain things. There's so many different varieties. So even from our perception, we can't really classify them as much as they would be able to. That's the understanding as well. Now, the second question. Okay. How can I understand what desires do the Acharyas and Krishna have for me in specific? The point is, we don't need to understand in specific. We need to just follow what they want us to do. They want us to follow what's given in scripture. So we engage in activities that are falling in line with Panchanga Bhakti. By carrying out the activities in Panchanga Bhakti, then we are aligning ourselves with the desires of the Acharyas. By aligning ourselves in desires of the Acharyas, we have the ability to reinforce our identity in the spiritual sky. When we reinforce our identity in the spiritual sky, we have the ability to act according to the blueprint of Krishna, act according to the desires of Krishna. So what we need to do is not known to us unless we have developed a keen sense of who we are in relationship to Krishna. So the process of bhakti and the quality of service basically improves as we reinforce our identities. As we evolve in Sambandha, Abhideya improves. As we evolve in Sambandha, Abhideya improves. So it is all a matter of knowing Sambandha. Yeah? Mother Yashoda doesn't have to be taught how to be a good mother to Krishna. She doesn't have to be, because her Sambandha is full, it's complete, it is Shuddha. There is no interspection of anything there. She does not even have the misconception of him being God. For her, it's pure, it's a son, this is my son. So there is really no feature of lack of knowledge which can interfere with her service. This is basically the fact that's being conveyed. So how do we improve on this? We follow the directions of the Acharyas, reinforce our identities. As our Sambandha increases, so will the Abhideya. That's how we will know. How can I understand what desires do the Acharyas and Krishna have for me in specific? Okay, that's what we answered. Anger is the mode of ignorance. When I get angry if the kids are not doing something or not following, is this also the mode of ignorance? Does anger not have a place at all in a devotee's life? Well, anger has a place in a devotee's life. There is anger in the spiritual sky. There is no enviousness. So in that sense, a mother becoming upset and angry is permissible because you are doing it unconditionally. You are not worried about the political ramifications of what your children would think of you if you do that. Srila Prabhupada used to become very upset with his disciples. He used to make grown, big, muscular, hunky men cry. They used to cry. And Prabhupada was only 5 feet and change, in terms of his stature. He used to make people cry because of the chastisement he used to land out. That's how bad he used to chastise. And he used to do it out of love. They never used to feel bad. They used to cry because it used to be intense. But they never used to feel bad or feel remorseful after the fact, other than the fact that they couldn't please him. Because there was so much love which he had, that first he had already given so much love upon them, that he then had the right to chastise. So since a mother has the ability to drop a tremendous amount of love upon their children, then they also have the right to chastise, to bring them in line. And that would never be mistaken by the child. Okay, so any other question or comment?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Although in the class you said you can't solve problems without spiritual potency. Do you mean spiritual problems or any type of problems?
Any type of
Because we
problem,
see,
any
yeah,
type.
we see like, yeah, even without any spiritual knowledge, we are solving like scientists or engineers. They are solving a lot of problems. So how to understand this when you say spiritual potency is required?
They create problems first and then they solve them. You see, the problem is that what is being solved is qualitative. I just don't want to go into the quality of problem solving by the community, the world community. I do not want to go into breaking down what they do well and not do well. I guess what I was trying to convey was that for a devotee, for us to come out of what we need to do, the biggest problem that we need to solve is our ability to develop a deeper understanding of a relationship with Krishna, because we have entangled ourselves into an identity, and that identity is posing all kinds of challenges. So for us to come out of it, there's need for spiritual potency. At a very mundane level, any problem solving requires Shakti, power. We on our own capacity have no power. We are in fact quite, I would say, disempowered if we were to just consider who we are as an individual. And this is not beating ourselves down or pulling ourselves down. This is not a product of self-esteem, low self-esteem. This is reality. Sometimes reality can be misinterpreted in the modern world as weakness. This is reality. We just don't have any capacity. Where is our capacity? Our capacity to fix issues that we are in comes from the fact that we are in touch with Lord Gauranga. And because we are in touch with Lord Gauranga, the demigods in the sky, they look upon us and they understand that we are trying to serve him. And as a consequence, they try to go a little bit easy on us. That is our ability. So the point I'm trying to make is by being in touch with the spiritual world, by being in touch with Lord Chaitanya's mission and the service to Lord Chaitanya, we have a line of cooperation between us and the demigods. And as a consequence, when we are trying to solve a problem, we bump into someone who can assist us. We bump into a solution. There's a pacification that happens. There may be a mantra, a prayer in Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a certain small offering that is being done somewhere to Krishna, which resolves issues. All of these become completely manifest. You see, for example, it is said in the Jyotish Shastras that if you want to resolve issues of Pitrashapa, say for example, where you have not served the Pitris from the previous lifetime, and then there are manifested issues due to Pitrashapa in this lifetime, then Jyotish Shastra or Shastra says, go and distribute Bhagavad Gita. Just imagine this. We don't distribute Bhagavad Gitas to solve Pitrashapa. We do it to please Srila Prabhupada. But that automatically has some side effect, or I would say minuscule benefit other than pleasing Srila Prabhupada and Lord Gauranga. It has the benefit of resolving an issue which others would take years and years and years and perhaps lifetimes to resolve. That's the example that I want to give. So we do Go Seva quite naturally. And Go Seva is a very, very powerful way to resolve issues in life. Very powerful way to serve the cows of Krishna. We do it naturally because we are Krishna conscious. Krishna loves cows and we make arrangements. We go and do things for the cows. And we just do not know that that's practically resolving issues and bringing us very closely in touch with solutions. It brings us in touch with ideas, solutions. It simply removes obstacles on our way. To please Srila Prabhupada, we do Guru Puja, because Srila Prabhupada told us, we wake up in the morning, do Guru Puja. This is the first thing that you do. We do some Saradava prayers, we greet the deities, and then we also do Guru Puja after the fact. Now, Guru Puja is such a powerful way to resolve issues that it is unimaginable for someone who is not in touch with spiritual potency. They have to be told that this is important. They have to build themselves to come and do it. For us, it's a matter of life. This is what we do every day. Yeah, I'm just trying to say that a lot of what we do can resolve a lot of issues without them even being understood by us, simply because we are trying to please Lord Gauranga. Even otherwise, if we have complex issues, the demigods cooperate with us because we are a part of Lord Gauranga's mission. So That's what our benefit is. That's the reason why I made a statement saying one needs to be spiritual to solve material issues. Lastly, material issues are caused by passion and ignorance. If we put ourselves in the higher level of mode of goodness, we have a very good chance of being able to resolve the passion, ignorance issues. This is how the Creator solves problems for himself. I hope this answers your question.
Yes, bro. Yeah, that makes sense, bro.
Thank
So
you.
one more question, bro.
Sure, please.
So the process of creation given in Bhagavatam is very much convincing, but we see from scientific community, we see they never acknowledge this process, even though it makes sense, but they still stick to the Big Bang theory and so many other Darwin's evolution theory, which doesn't make sense if you really think about it. But why this process of creation given in Bhagavatam didn't become popular or in the scientific community? What do you think?
That's exactly what we read about today. Because the scientific community is in touch with the mode of ignorance. So the level of knowledge that they can develop can only be due to gross observation. They cannot receive ideas into their heart like Srila Vyasadeva. Yeah? But we are in touch with Srila Vyasadeva. Srila Vyasadeva is Krishna's incarnation. As a consequence, he could see how the universes were created. He could see the ending of the universe. He could literally see Karmada Kushai Vishnu lying on the causal ocean. When we read Srimad Bhagavatam, please remember this very carefully. When we read Srimad Bhagavatam, we have to remember that whatever was written in the Srimad Bhagavatam was seen and experienced by Srila Vyasadeva. There is no theory in Srimad Bhagavatam. These are experiences. This is real experiences. And when you come in touch with real experiences, and when we step aside and pray to Srila Prabhupada and the Parampara, these real experiences become manifest in our heart as well. So for us to accept it, we are chanting Nam, we are serving. So Krishna is giving mercy, and a consequence, we are able to accept the reality of Lord Srila Vyasadeva's vision. They are not doing that. They are in touch with the mode of ignorance. They are identifying with their PhDs. They're identifying with their position in the scientific community. They're identifying with what has already been discovered, but which keeps changing because it's relative truth. That's acceptable. Yeah, new discoveries get made, and new, I would say, hypotheses come into play, and then they try and prove it. And there's a lot of, I would say, change that occurs in the community simply because they're dependent on their identity as scientists. They're dependent on their identity as PhDs. Srila Prabhupada solved the PhD problem. A PhD comes into our temple, he sent them into the kitchen. He said, go wash pots. Because they go into the kitchen and they start washing pots, they forget their PhDs, they understand I'm washing pots for Krishna. Then knowledge becomes revealed and things become clear to them because now they are in the position of being a washer of pots in the kitchen of the Lord's kitchen. They're not a PhD anymore. So then they start receiving knowledge, and their own knowledge becomes, I would say, a means for them to come and accept Krishna's knowledge. That's how our scientists, our great PhDs in our movement, they all came in touch with Srila Prabhupada. In many cases, they did a lot of menial service and they understood Srila Prabhupada's mission more clearly, because when you do menial service, imagine holding a broom and thinking you are a PhD, you're a CEO, you're a CFO. Hold a broom, you're holding a broom, you're a sweeper. Yeah, that's the identity. It's clear. So it's a very simple, straightforward way to really smash things down and then bring it to a line which you can handle. So holding a broom every day, cleaning the temple every day with a broom and a mop is perhaps the best service one could ever imagine doing, because it can really give a lot of clarity. And this whole idea of who we are becomes smashed down to someone who is holding a broom and serving Krishna. So that's the difference.
Yes, bro. So the same will help us even if we do the menial service at home. I think it will help us breaking this false ego.
Absolutely. Yes. Doing menial service at home and also having an understanding that the home belongs to Krishna. It is the Lord's home. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, bro.
Sure.
One more thing, this Nirjala Ekadasi is coming on this Tuesday. What suggestion could you give, Prabhu, for observing Nirjala Ekadasi?
Well, I guess I don't have a suggestion to make other than being Nirjal. Sorry, not trying to be funny, but I think the previous night you could stop eating by 6 o'clock in the evening. It always helps the next day, I guess, if that's what you're trying to ask me for practically implementing it. Yeah, if you want to practically implement it, stopping the previous night at 6 o'clock can help you fast the next day better. If that's what you're asking me about. Yeah.
Okay, Prabhu. Yeah, that could be helpful. I never heard this. We thought generally we eat as much as possible the previous day, and so that like that.
Yeah, you can, if you eat too much in the previous night, then the digestive juices and everything else are very active. So if the stomach starts resting from the previous night, it's easier to keep it rested the next day as well. You can drink water. And again, you see, these are recommendations. What works for me may not work for you. So you should see what works for you and do it accordingly as well.
Yeah. Other than Prabhu, is it advisable not to engage in work or office-related work? Better to take leave and engage in only reading
you can.
And chanting?
Yes, if you want to do it seriously, that might not be a bad idea at all.
Okay. Okay, Prabhu. Thank you.
Sure. So let me see.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Sorry. Prabhu, you mentioned that like some of the planets are eternal. So like that, even the stars like Rohini, Nakshatra, are these eternal, Prabhu?
Well, see, the point is that some of the planets are eternal in the sense that we want to understand it in a very different way. The spiritual sky is eternal. The material planets are not eternal. Because when Lord Brahma's day ends, everything collapses. There's Mahapralaya. Everything ends with Lord Brahma's life. But the end of Lord Brahma's day, the lower planetary systems get destroyed. The higher planetary systems remain. So the Antariksha remains, the sun remains, etc. Yeah? The lower planetary systems get destroyed. That is what is understood.
Okay.
So we want to use the word eternal very carefully. Eternal means spiritual sky. There's nothing in the material sky which one can say in reality is eternal, even though the age of things in the material sky can be trillions and trillions of years by our calculation. It is eternal, but it is not eternal by the calculations of what happens in the spiritual sky.
So during the initial destruction, the only lower planets get destroyed, and then they'll be recreated again.
Right.
And the living beings who are taking birth, I mean, they have the link with the stars, no, Prabhu? Like their behavior and everything, they have a link with the stars. So
yes. Mm-hmm.
Those stars then when the destruction happens then.
See, the point is as follows. The links with the stars happen because that is our karma. So how karma is going to be managed, how karma is going to be reinforced, is how we are linked to the stars. So it is not that we are eternally linked to the stars. It is our karma which links us to the stars. So once the karma is over, the next birth could be something else altogether.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Right. Any other question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat.
Prabhuji, I'm just wondering, what is the position of Kailash Dham? Is it happens after, is it beyond the Karana Daksha ocean, or it's after Mahavishnu or Karana Daksha Vishnu?
There, you see, yeah, sorry to interrupt you. So there is Kailash there is a Rudra, there's a Kailash in every universe. And then there is Shivadam in basically the whole of material creation. So there is Lord Shiva, and then there are expansions of Lord Shiva, who are the 11 Rudras. And each universe has a Rudra, which is assigned to it, who maintains the universe, and who also destroys the universe at the end. You see? So it's a more complex arrangement. So there are expansions of Lord Shiva, who carry Shiva Tattva. The first expansion comes from Lord Ananta. And then from him, there are so many different Shivas who come, Lord Rudras who come. There are Ekadasha Rudras. The Ekadasha Rudras have assignment of managing different universes, etc. And they have different roles to play in the universe. So Karanodakashaya Vishnu, he lies in the causal ocean, which is between the spiritual and the material sky, but which is basically the spiritual sky. Yeah, that is the spiritual sky. So the point is that Lord Shiva, in his original form as Hara, that is Haradam, is a part of the spiritual sky. He sits in the gate of the spiritual sky. Yeah, and then there are expansions who perform the role of Rudras in different universes. And they come into the universes in different ways, and then there's Kailash. So when we refer to Lord Shiva, we are not referring to Kailashpati. We are not referring to Kailashpati. Kailashpati is very different from Lord Shiva, which they refer to as the glance, the original glance who comes. Yeah, see that these are two different things. There's an expansion who comes into different areas. Does it make sense? So when we refer to Lord Shiva, we are looking at the different personality who expands and who is the personified glance of Mahavishnu. That's the difference.
Right. So the highest of the Shiv tattvas would be Shambhu or Shiva.
Shambhu is the name which is assigned. But the point is, you can say that Mahavishnu is also called Sadashiva. He is the original. A prototype is Lord Shiva. Hara. Ananta is the original. From him, there's a first expansion who is called the prototype. He is Lord Shiva. Yeah, so that's why we say Sankarshana is Ananta. Then Shankara is Lord Shiva. He is meditating on Sankarshana all the time. Yeah. Then from that Shiva, there are expansions of different Rudras because he carries the potency. And then those Rudras themselves they play roles in different universes, different places, different planetary systems. Yeah, they're all worshipped in different ways in different places. So it's a more complex arrangement. So when we use the word Kailash, we are not referring to the original Shiva who expanded from Lord Ananta. His situation is different. He sits at the gate of the spiritual sky. You know, he is equivalent to what we look at here as Gopeshwar Mahadev in Vrindavan. He sits here right at the gate to the spiritual sky. You cannot enter into any pastime. You can't even understand the potency of Vrindavan without paying respects to Gopeshwar. If Gopeshwar Mahadev doesn't give blessings, then you cannot have anything to do with Vrindavan. It's not possible. So when you walk on the streets of Vrindavan, what is it which gives us the ability to distinguish the spiritual versus material? What if we get overwhelmed by the open sewers? What if we get overwhelmed by some of the poverty that we see? What if we get overwhelmed by thinking that this is basically the material world? What is it which is going to allow us to distinguish? That distinguishing factor, that mercy of being able to distinguish matter from spirit is given by Gopeshwar Mahadev. He's like a guru. He removes that agyan. He basically smears our eyes with the ability to experience the spiritual sky. So that particular personality sits at the gate of the spiritual sky, qualifying each and every one of us. Yeah, and he is the one who expands and destroys the ignorance of the material universe when the time comes as Rudra. So he is the first expansion. He is the glance. He is the father of the universes, the material universes. So that is Haradam. That is the entrance to the spiritual sky itself. Yeah?
Right, yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, just trying to understand, if we want to have a read of it, is it mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, probably, or we probably have to...
Yeah, it is a combination of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. You can read Chaitanya Charitamrita. You can. It is also found in Vrindavan Das Thakur as Chaitanya Bhagavat. There are different classifications. Yeah, you can read about all of this. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is the 4th canto, but you can also read in the 11th canto. You can read. You know, there are different places in Srimad Bhagavatam actually. But yeah, but the point is as follows. You know, we are not politicians. Our world is not divided into those who like Lord Shiva and those who hate Lord Shiva. We see that in India, even amongst the Vaishnavas. We are not politicians. we understand that he is a Param Vaishnav. He is the greatest of all Vaishnavas. He is the greatest of all preachers and the most compassionate example of Vaishnavism which can ever be found. Completely non-envious, accepting each and everyone who comes to him and gives mercy. So he's very dear to Krishna. Now, he's very dear to the divine couple. He's very dear. Yeah? So basically, understanding his position requires an understanding of how our Acharyas lived. Srila Sanatan Goswami used to visit Gopeshwar Mahadev every day. Every day he used to visit. Then Gopeshwar Mahadev said, "You're very old and you're coming all the way from one side of the Yamuna to the other. Another side, it is a little bit of a distance for Sanatan Goswami to walk all the way to see Gopeshwar Mahadev. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev is right at the gate of Vamsivat. So coming all the way from where he is to Vamsivat was quite a distance. In Vamsivat is where the Raslila happens in the night. Vrindavan is a lotus petal, it's like a flower. So one may wonder, Krishna is having Govardhan pastimes and Radharani is having Radhakund pastimes during the day. How do they reach Vamsivat in the night to have Raslila? How do they come to Seva Kunj? Basically, it is like a lotus. The lotus closes in the night and everybody comes closer and closer and closer. The distance narrows down. The lotus at the rising of the sun expands. Everybody reaches their destination. Krishna reaches Nandagaon. Radharani reaches Rishabhanupur. Vasana, then they meet again in Govardhan. The spiritual world is dynamic. It keeps moving based on the desire of the divine couple. Yeah, this is an experience. This is an experience. Basically, if you're in the spiritual sky, then basically it's an experience for them to move from one side to the other. Sri Sanatan Goswami used to come every day to visit Gopeshwar. Gopeshwar Mahadev said, "Okay, don't come. You're very old. I will come." So then he went to where Sanatan Goswami was. Sri Sanatan Goswami did sadhana in Chakaleshwar near Govardhan. Sri Sanatan Goswami did sadhana here in Madan Mohan Mandir next to the Yamuna. So Gopeshwar basically came there and he became Bankandeshwar. You see, there are places called Bankandi. He came there and he became situated there. So it's a very, very powerful relationship between Srila Sanatan Goswami. They were actually close friends. Srila Sanatan Goswami and Lord Shiva, they were very close. So as a consequence, they used to meet every day. He used to come every day. Yeah. So our Acharyas, they never divided themselves into saying, "Oh, one should only go to this kind of temple. One shouldn't visit Shiva." We all understand his position. He is the greatest of Vaishnavas. He is Krishna's dearest servant, without whose mercy one cannot enter into the spiritual sky. So we look upon him with, I would say, tremendous amount of respect and love in Vraj, in Vrindavan, because for us, he is basically in the gates. Without his permission, no one can enter into anything in Vraj. Nobody would be given permission. So we all recognize it internally. So we have that particular position. We never go and visit the Dham unless you go to visit Lord Shiva. So this Lord Shiva is different from the Kailashpati Lord Shiva. Yeah. For those who only understand Kailashpati, they will see Kailashpati here. For those who understand his love with Krishna and his connection, they would see Gopeshwar Mahadev. So during the day, he has got Shivling. In the night, he's dressed as a gopi. There's a different complex arrangement. So it's a very, very complex, very intricate relationship. And it is very difficult to understand unless one has mercy from the Acharyas. So please read, and I hope Krishna gives you mercy to understand his servant.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Krishna.
Okay. The local Brajvasis, they were commenting on the fact that Vrindavan, I would say for most part, is literally free from the assailing of the COVID-19, the coronavirus. And they have great confidence, the Brajvasis. They would say, nothing will come here. Gopeshwar is there. He will not allow anything to come here. He will protect the Dham. So that is how they look upon Lord Shiva, Gopeshwar Mahadev.
Very well.
Yeah.
He's a really interesting personality. I mean, and giving lots of mercy. So, and trying to understand him is also very difficult.
He is difficult to understand. Yes, there's no doubt about it. Yeah. Just as Balaram is difficult to understand, Guru is difficult to understand. Shiva is difficult to understand. Shiva Tattva and Guru Tattva are the same. They're all very difficult and complex to understand.
When you say Shiva Tattva and Guru Tattva are the same, Prabhuji, can you
Yes, because Guru destroys ignorance, Shiva destroys ignorance. Lord Shiva destroys ignorance, Guru destroys ignorance. So they are the same.
And just to expand further on it, when we say Sadguru and Guru, they are different terminology when we talk about, because somebody told me that when we talk about Sadguru, it's mostly representation of Lord Shiva when we talk about it. But then they expanded that Guru, because the same expansion you gave, that both destroys ego and ignorance within one's heart. So they are somehow same, but it was difficult to understand there as well.
I don't think we need to differentiate, to be honest. Sadguru, in one sense, is someone who is very sincere. The expression Sadguru is someone who is truly representative of his Guru. Who is a Sadguru? A Sadguru is a proper disciple. Who is a Sadguru? A Sadguru is a proper disciple. His Guru is a good Guru because he's a proper disciple, so on and so forth. So, yes, if you want to represent truth, we be proper disciples. That's what it is. A Guru is one who is a proper disciple. That's why he's a good Guru. Sadguru. So I don't want to differentiate, to be honest. I think this nomenclature is largely used in other circles, but in our circles, we basically understand Guru Tattva and we understand it as a lineage. We generally don't expend so much. At least I haven't really spent too much time differentiating, to be honest.
No, thanks, Prabhu. That's okay.
Yeah, sure.
It's something which reappeared in discussion basically long time ago, and then it reappeared. So I thought of like.
No, not at all. What I'm trying to say is that basically our idea of the differentiation between Lord Shiva being the spiritual master of the world versus our own spiritual master, they all carry the potency of Lord Nityananda. They all carry the potency of Balaram. So in our sense, we don't differentiate much because they all perform the function. There is certainly hierarchy, there's no doubt. But we don't bring that hierarchy up too much because it's different with us. I don't see that hierarchy coming up too often in discussions when we look at things.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I mean, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Sure. One last question from anyone, then we can say good night.
Prabhu, I have one question related to creation. I heard sometimes people talk about Devi Bhagavatam as Mother Durga is cause of everything. But in our Islam circles, I never heard any guru or anyone speak about Devi Bhagavatam. So is this authorized scripture, Prabhu, Devi Bhagavatam? What do you say?
See, it is a matter of faith. If there is Krishna and then there is his external energy. One is saying Lord Krishna is the origin, which is the opinion of the Bhagavat, it is the opinion of Mahaprabhu, it is the opinion of all the personalities who are in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam, including Srila Vyasadeva, most importantly. Then there are those who are very, very closely aligned with the Divine Mother, Mother Durga. They see Krishna's external energy as being the cause and the effect and everything else. So it is based on their faith. That is what motivates them. That is what they feel is important. That is what they want to do. Yeah. So can I justify their actions based on what I believe in terms of it? No, I can't. But can I discourage them? Will I discourage them? I will not. And the reason is faith is very hard to come by in this universe. At some day, that faith they have in Mother Durga, when they become sincere, she will send them to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So why shatter that faith? Just help them become sincere in serving whomever they have faith in. Then they would say, be sent to Mahaprabhu. That's what I would do personally. That's my outlook. That's how I look at it. Faith should never be disturbed because it's very, very difficult to restore it. It's very, very rare to have faith. Different people have faith based on their own abilities and their consciousness. Our business is to encourage that faith and modify it and position it in such a way that they somehow or the other can receive the mercy of Lord Nityananda. That is our business. But we don't want to shatter that faith and then start ground level again, because that's very difficult to do. This requires some strategy, this requires some thinking. So this requires some level of, understanding how this works as well. Yeah, because this is how things cooperate. If today we have the consciousness to have a conversation with Mother Durga, and we ask her, should we chant your names or should we chant Harinam? She will tell us, chant Harinam. But we need to have consciousness to be able to have a conversation with her, to understand her heart. She is here to create circumstances which are favorable for the jivas to serve Lord Gauranga. There's no doubt. So we respect her for that, knowing fully well that these personalities who are closely associated with Krishna, they only desire service to Krishna. But if there are those who serve them directly, they don't discourage them, because that is faith. And then once that faith reaches a point where it can come in touch with the mode of goodness, then ignorance would go away, and then they would have the ability to serve Krishna, Gauranga in different ways. It requires a very long strategy and a very long-term view of a jiva's journey, and it requires compassion. What makes people shatter other people's lives and their faith is their own false ego. If someone has the power to give Krishna's names directly, like Prabhupada did, Srila Prabhupada had the power to take the false ego out of someone's heart and then present Nam to them. If we can do that, great, fantastic. That is fantastic. Otherwise, what we do is we tread very carefully, because this is faith. There's someone who has worshipped Mother Durga for 3 lifetimes, is now in a position to worship her for the 4th lifetime. They are attached to her. There is, if you tell them that you go here and you go there, we have Goloka, we have, this facility in Goloka, we have that facility, Krishna plays, and they would say, no, I want to go to Mother Durga's Dham, because they are attached to her. Same thing with Lord Shiva. They are attached to him. They are not wanting to come where we are wanting to go, because they're very attached. Sri Murari Gupta Prabhu in Chaitanya Chaitamrita, he could never look at Lord Chaitanya as Krishna. He said, I can only see you as Lord Sri Ram, because he was Hanuman. You cannot bring Hanumanji and say, become something else. Hanumanji will say, I can only serve Lord Sri Ram, because that's my life, that's my soul, that's where my faith is, that's my experience. So we need to understand it from that perspective, so that we respect it and we encourage it to the extent possible. We modify it so that they're facilitating the movement of the soul so that they could move forward. Then there would come a time when the personality whom they are worshipping, who are also servants of Lord Gauranga, would glance at them very mercifully and say, go now and chant Harinam, because that is what is pleasing to me. So that's our understanding.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. It's really great information, Prabhu.
Sure. Any last question? We'll stop here. I said last question before, but I think I'll take one more, if there is any. Okay. So thank you very much for joining us. The next week we continue with chapter 6 of chapter 6 of 2nd canto. And please do read chapter 6 of the 2nd canto and then come over. This would give us an understanding. Hare Krishna.